So I have the honor to present my visualization about the team knowledge model, which is related to the learning processes of teams. I will give a general introduction, motivation, what it's based on, and then I will share some experiences, real models from real teams, what we did there, and maybe I give also some tips on that, and maybe if you have questions, we can also talk about your thoughts. I will not go through all the details of the pages, but I will hopefully cover the most important stuff. So what is my motivation? What is the foundation of that? When I became a Scrum Master, there was, what would I say? There was an aim and that holy grail that there are existing high-performance teams. And but what is that exactly, and how can we develop a team there to high-performance teams, whatever that also means? So I understood that somehow that is related to scale up, to be faster, broader, more performance of the teams, and that's related to increasing the knowledge and the skills of the team, right? And that's what I was focusing on with the team knowledge model. But that's not really covered here, because a high-performance team is a team which has also social contact, connections to each other, they like each other, they have fun, and that's not really covered in the model. So I cover on improving skills and knowledge. So when you see that scaling is an important characteristic of a high-performance team, then there are some questions with that, which means what is the scaling potential? How much knowledge do they have so that they can develop their skills by themselves? What is the actual scaling status? Where are they in using their scaling skills? Are there scaling impediments? So maybe they have a lack of knowledge in the team and they cannot acquire that by themselves, maybe. And maybe over time you can also see that there is a change in their development, and I call that the scaling process. How do they develop on that? And from my perspective, successful scaling means that all of the team members have a continuously know-how ramp up and demand on learning for all team members. So for me, a team, if you call it a team in less or a Scrum team, this is a learning community. They share what they know, they care for each other, and of course they dare also as well for each other. And of course they have hopefully fun at work. That's also important. So teams usually face some of these challenges. So they need to cope with that challenge, that they need to invest time in learning, but they should also simultaneously productive and performing on that. That's somehow a challenge which they have to balance out. How do they see that who is expert in the team and who needs help? That's also not obviously at the beginning in the team. When they work a long time together, it's clear we're expert or not, but at the beginning it might be difficult to see that. And one question is also, in which direction does the team develop itself? Has everyone his own idea of his personal development? Do they combine that as a real team, so they have also to focus on that? Or is it even valuable for the organization, for the product, what they are learning? So that's also a valid thinking in teams there. And how do they combine individual targets with the team targets? So many organizations, I face that they have individual targets, goals, but how do we make sure that they are not contradicting each other, so that they really work on the same goals, and how to combine that? And the team knowledge model based on the flow model, I come to that immediately, can give at least some answers of these questions and challenges. So the flow from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, it's coming from the sport. It means, yeah, it's hard to say. I'm not sure if I did it right. So this guy was saying that if there is a balance from very hard or very high challenges and my skills, then I'm in the flow. I forget time and space. Everything is flowing. So many people know that from sport. So, and if you are above the flow here, oh, that's not that good working here, then you might be overwhelmed with your task. You have not the sufficient skills for that, so it's hard to work there. And on the lower skill here, scale below the flow, if you cannot bring your skills, your competencies in your organization or in your daily work, you might be bored of that. And before I go to the next slide, the flow in the world of working means you have a nice balance between the challenges, your daily work, and your skills. So you can say that you are in the flow if you have challenging work tasks to do, which is interesting to you, you like that, and you can work in a manner of a fluid, so unbroken certainty. So you don't need constantly help from others, you are not blocked, so you can really flow on that. In 2009, Joseph Pelrine explained some behavior at the edges of the flow, which might be also interesting. So if you don't know something, you can increase the challenges. And over time, you will learn that. That's somehow learning by doing. So you go back to the flow, and if you repeat that pattern at that edge, then you increase your skills over time. Many people of us like that, is called working by doing, learning by doing, but that can cause a problem. If you stay over the flow and won't come back into the flow, that have these areas where we feel uncomfortable, some insecure. Do I really get that job done? Do I learn that? That feels for some people bad. Some people are thrilled by that. The problem is not the space there and the feeling with that. The problem will be if you remain in that area. If you won't get back into the flow, that will be very, very stressful situation. And there's a principle called that, the Peter principle. I'm not sure if you have heard that. That means everyone gets promoted until he reaches the degree of incompetence. And that can be very, very stressful, and that can lead to a burnout, right? Because you're constantly overwhelmed by what you have to do. And at this lower border of the flow, we have that, okay, we send people to courses. They learn something. And then they come back, and then they apply the new learning for new tasks. So this is another technique to learn on that, on the edge, on the flow. And if you continue at that edge, so you educate first yourself, and then you try to take over new challenging tasks, you come back into the flow as well. And that's also a practical and very useful technique to learn. Imagine a doctor will do this learning by doing. That might be not what we would like to have, right? So it's good that they have a long education before they start. So the problem is also not related to that area. Being below the flow, that can be very useful. The problem is if you stand there, and especially if it's not self-elected. Just imagine you go to a course, you have new skills, you would like to apply it, and your boss or your team says, no, you don't get any work for that. You can still cook coffee for us, for instance. So that can feel as being mobbed or mobbing. And that can also lead to bad things. that people maybe run into a bore-out, which might be the same effects with the burnout. So from my perspective, if you use that, I combine that model not on an individual basis, I do that on a team basis, and that's the team knowledge model. So the team knowledge model can visualize the knowledge distribution within the team. So who knows what, who is expert, who is not that skillful of that. So, and it shows the balance between the challenges and the skills for every individual in the team. It shows a potential scaling impediment if the team has not enough knowledge in the team, so you can also work on that. And over time, if you repeat that team knowledge model, you can also see some improvements in the team as well. So, based on the flow model, you have these several areas where you can then say and give a self-estimate where I am. So in that example, my coding know-how is on an expert level, for instance. Not anymore, but used to be. Okay, but testing, maybe I know more than I can do, but I'm fine with that. Mid-size knowledge, that's okay. And in the domain knowledge, to be honest, I do not really understand in that sense that what the business model is or what the domain knowledge is. And when I do something, refinement, I find it hard to talk to customers and so on. So I feel a little bit overwhelmed. So it's individual. Every person is doing that individually in the team. Then it's independent. Also, do not do that together. So imagine you are a 25-year experienced developer, very experienced, as a newcomer, comes fresh from university. And if you would make your cross here, and you are a named expert in the organization, but you are humble on that, everyone who considers himself as not that experienced will do his cross on the left side of yours. So this is so that you do not get these relatives here, so don't do that. So it's also interesting if people rate themselves very high, but the whole team knows that, oh, we might have here a problem as well, right? That's also a valuable feedback or valuable insight in the team then. So when they do that, we bring that into the common model, in the team model. That's really nice. So we have some grades on that. So I have here on the y-axis the low challenges, the mid challenges, and maybe very high challenges. And I use for the skills Shuhari, which is related to, in the shoe, I'm willing to learn the rules, stick to the rules, that what I can do, but in many tasks I need help. In a ha, I can make some exceptions from the rules, I can deal with some stuff, a little bit creative on that. Most thing I can do by myself, and in re, I'm a real expert in that. So, and then the team does the access. So I take the individual sheets and together with the team, we come together and then I transfer, or Scrum Master transfers the access from the individual sheets per domain into the knowledge model. And then you see that you might have a distribution on that, and then you draw a circle around that. That eases then the analysis later on. I will come back to that as well. So, and you do that, okay, for the next domain and the next domain. So you get these cycles. You see that some people are maybe overwhelmed here, hard stuff, so they need help to get back into the flow. And from my perspective, the team is responsible. They own their processes. They own their knowledge ramp up. And the interesting point is here, the team should feel responsible to help all the team members to go back as fast as they want, back into the flow. So what you can see here is that the team has in coding know-how and domain know-how, they have experts. In the testing know-how, you see that no one really considers himself as an expert, and that might be a problem for the team, because whether they miss that knowledge and cannot really become an expert in that domain, or maybe it takes much longer to ramp up that knowledge. So that can be an important information for the team to ask for help from outside. So if you draw these maps, then you do interpret them. So you find concrete measures. You identify a pair for learning, for instance. Pair learning is one of the most powerful techniques, like pair programming, mob programming, whatever you think there. And then you agree on a simple technique that you say, okay, we do another team knowledge model to see the process, that we really do something on that. And if you do that, you might end up in something like that. Probably not. But what you see here is that, oh, there is a team member which doesn't develop in that area. That doesn't mean that this is a real problem, but you visualize that and you can then discuss that. Maybe it's okay. Maybe the team has to figure out why that team member was forgotten or not involved in learning for the domain know-how, for instance, in that. So this is very unrealistic, but that's a perfection vision, right? This is something we don't force anyone to become an expert in all the stuff. So these T-shirt worker or that statement we hear in Scrum that everyone can everything, that's, from my perspective, nonsense, right? But we offer, if someone would like to become an expert in a dedicated domain, then why should the team not support that? So we can do that. So you have at least got the theory, and now I give you some examples and explain that a little bit more. So this was a real team knowledge model done at a team building workshop right after we moved from component teams to feature teams. So we had, the good news was in every domain we had experts in there. Somehow we did some expert knowledge not really used, didn't work on that topic here, but we had the knowledge in there. So, and you see that many newcomers were here also coming in the team. So we were not only component team, we grow our organization. We had, I think, 3 or 4 smaller teams, and then we add more people in there. So that was clear for us that many of the people did not know something about of these domains or have not done yet anything. So the domains were Java development, G2E. You can see that it's a little bit older, that one. CM meta access, that was a domain. South mediation interface was a domain, a business domain topic here. Testing knowledge, and one thing I gave them, because many learning fields can be derived from the product backlog. But it's very good to have at least one domain where the team can decide by themselves what they would like to learn. So that motivates them to learn. And in that case, that was the OOD pattern. So we then analyzed that. Did we have big circles, smaller circles? Big circles usually say immediately that you have a huge diversity, whether in skills or whether in the workload of the organization. Small circle says we are quite harmonized in the team, but maybe there is some distribution missing. Depends on where the circle are. If they are on the higher right side, then it's good if it's small circles. If it's on the lower left side, it's not that good. Then they agree on concrete measures, right? They know now who is expert in the team and who might need help. So they can agree maybe on pair working, pair learning. There was a concrete topic here that two developers do a CSJP certification, and they read the book and they said, okay, we read chapter for chapter, and every sprint we take half a day time where we reflect on that to deepen the knowledge with that. Questioning that is related so that sometimes people hesitate to ask for help, or they hesitate to ask questions, and they decide in that there are no silly questions. Everything is allowed to question, and we value that, and that opens the box for more communication or more collaboration in the team. And a learning day, that was a specialty. I never met a customer or a company which did that again. It was possible for the team to decide one day in the sprint we reserve for learning, individually or for a whole team. And one of the actions here was that whatever you learn and take your time, you need to use that day to share your knowledge so that others benefit also from your learning process. That was one of the issues. So after nearly 1 year, we did a follow-up model. And what you can see, they really moved the axis, right? Not that I just showed you in the example, they were not all in the flow. And what they find out is that more people get overwhelmed because they get more tasks. They love to work by learning by doing. And not being in the flow is not a problem. It depends on how fast do you come back into the flow again. And that's also the team responsibility to help there. So what you can see here that nearly all the axes go up here. What you also can see that every domain somehow improves, except this one. It's not that visible here, but that's the blue one. That's the South mediation interface here. And that team was not working. Even we lost, obviously, some experts. When you remember the first, I go to that one here. If you remember here, the South mediation interface, we had an expert here. It's not there anymore. CMA access, sorry. It's not anymore here. That was reasonable for the team because they didn't work in that area for 1 year. And even the expert was claiming to say, within that year, they developed that business area, that component, further on. And therefore, I'm not an expert anymore because I do not know all these changes. So the team could then also react on that and say, okay, we need to collaborate more, or maybe after 1 year, it's a little bit late, I think, but that was one of the mistakes we did. They could have, if they see that much earlier, they could then vote for backlog items in that domain so that they be there or participate in refinements. So you see that the team didn't work fully according to less. So that was the explanation to that. Maybe another one, which is a second in the same environment, a second team, where the people also get somehow very high overwhelmed, that they felt very overwhelmed at the beginning. And after, also many people did not know too much about all these domains. That was nearly at the same time we started here. And that was also very interesting and an effect in the model which I did not expect or have foreseen that. That was an experiment there. They worked in a very difficult environment because their priorities in the backlog changed very often. They couldn't finish some stuff very often. They had some hard times over 6 months, I think, and they were quite frustrated. That was the team when I left So I left that company, and then I said, okay, the final thing we do a follow-up on the model. And then we did that model here. So imagine that team was quite frustrated with the work situation, and they thought they do not have any progress. And then we did that model, and then we looked at that, and then we compared it to the original model, and said, oh, we did a lot of shit. We did really learn a lot of shit in the last year, and that was quite motivating for them. Even that it was not that valuable maybe for the product, all of the team members have improved, and that was really motivating them to take new actions and to welcome change because it's a learning opportunity for them. That was some of the interesting stuff there. These remaining axes and at the bottom, 2 of them is me, because I started to become more a coach. I didn't work that much with the team, and therefore I didn't learn there. Was okay for me, right? So there is no right or wrong, so it depends on the team. Doesn't mean that everyone has to learn everything. Maybe some tips and pitfalls. One of the challenges is that a team need to understand that it's their responsibility to help each other to grow. So if someone in the team is not learning, but he would like to learn, then it's my responsibility as a team member to support him. And this needs to be understood before you start with such a team knowledge model, because if they do not care about their team members, if they do not care about the growth of their team members, they might not be interesting to pair up, right? So this is one of the things I would here recommend. And of course, even that you can say that the flow model from Mihaly is science. That team knowledge model is not science. That's a self-estimation process, right? So, and this is, people need to be open for that. But it's also sometimes important for the team to see where they are, because if they have access a lot of on the left lower side, the mood in the team might not be that good. So people like to be in the flow, challenging tasks, that they do something valuable. And that's usually done more on the upper right corner. So this is also interesting to reflect on the moves. Maybe do not use more than 6 areas, because then the chart gets so crowded that it's hard to do really improvements on that. And also for the team, it's hard to work on 10, 15 different areas in the same manner. As a team, that might be a problem here. And one important thing is do not write X's to the names to the X's, because then maybe a person from outside can see who is who, right? And that will change the way how people make their X's. If the manager comes and say, hey, Mark, you are there down low there, I won't pay you more money, that might be really difficult. So don't do that, and do not wait 6, 8 or nearly a year, 6 months or 8 or nearly a year until you do the follow-up. Do that more often. Depends on the cadence you would like to learn and how difficult it is to learn in that environment. But so every 3, 6 or 9 months might be a good option here. But there are also some pitfalls about that. Because it's a self-estimation process, people might cheat themselves, or maybe shine a little bit more, or maybe hide their skills, their feelings. What you should not do is showing that to the management and with names, and maybe they use that to judge about people. That would be not a nice thing. Usually I bring that team knowledge model and put it in the team space, so that they are aware that they have to do something there. Of course, together with the measurements there, they find. And if you do that anonymously, that's also possible, but then it's harder to find who is expert and who not. That takes just longer. So this is something, we might not do there. Use the TKM. There are also some potentials, new ideas. I never once I did that one here. If you have structured multiple teams from component in feature teams, and you do that in all of the teams, if they agree on that, then you might see if you have the skilled right balanced across the team. Or maybe you can detect if some of the teams might not have the right knowledge, so that they can maybe interact with other teams and collaborate more in the multi-team sessions to exchange their knowledge and their practices. With the hypothetical team knowledge models might be also interesting, that you might challenge the team and say, okay, you need maybe of these domains, learning domains, at least 2 or 3 experts, right? And the team figures out who is interested in that. That might be also something you can then use to organize or to combine, that some of the teams build some specialties if they like. So do not dictate that. Ask the team what kind of domains they would like to learn, and for the organization maybe. Maybe also some interesting facts about learning. I won't go too deep in that. There are some passive learning techniques and some active learning practices. And if the numbers are fully correct, I don't bother about that, but there is something, we know that active learning is more valuable or more sustainable than just passive learning there. And this can help teams to define some stuff and practices on sharing their knowledge, teaching each other and so on. That's very interesting. The next learning technique we can discuss, or pair programming, pair working. I experienced that as a powerful technique to increase my skills. I know that there are coaches outside that say, if you have a newbie and a very senior person, that doesn't work. True, except the experienced person has a personal interest to educate others. And the newbie is really willing to listen to the expert and learning from them. This is also learning by doing. Then it's really, really valuable for the organization using pair or mob programming. That's an education technique, right? So this is, and you can use that also even for accounting. It's not related only to pair programming. You can also use that for every kind of working where an expert with a newbie come together and try to learn on that topic. And maybe some helpful learning techniques, pair mob programming, coding dojos, where you have coding cutters, where you learn some dedicated practices on that. Community of practice, in LESS we call that communities, but because they make decisions, but when it's related to learning, can still be community of practice. Pair learning, pair reading, I mentioned that, to find a couple, a buddy, where we challenge each other in learning. Very important, we have some stressful times in the sprint. The team should also reserve some time every sprint in learning. Create forums. The development practices, or design principles, solid, or the GRASP principles from Greg Lamb, very insightful techniques to share knowledge and learning in the teams, in the realm of software. And what I find very, very helpful when I touch new code or code I've never touched before, writing tests for that, acceptance test-driven development, that enables you to understand the domain much better. That's, I think, a very cool technique. So I'm quite fast with that. I'm so done. If you have questions, you can raise them now. Yeah. So when do I apply the model? Was that the question? For team. So usually I suggest that when a team is newly formed and they do not know each other that well, even if they know each other quite well and they do the visualization, it's easier to derive actions to improve. Right? So in a dedicated team building workshop, which we usually do when we have the time or the customer allows us, but that's a helpful topic. It's better than drinking a beer in a bar. That's also still needed. You can also drink here a beer, but the team should really work on their practices, on their agreements on that, and then you can use that. And the follow-up models, usually I do that in the team retrospective. So it doesn't cause additional time on that. That's also related to improve the team. You can do that once every half year, something like that. It's not that much. Or maybe if you have the time, you can ask the team for a dedicated session on that. Yeah. Don't invite them to the team building workshop or retrospective in that case. You can do that secretly, but I prefer to be transparent on that and put the team knowledge model itself in the team room so that they really see that. But don't answer questions to, oh, what is that X, or what did you do there? So maybe you give also the measures if there are no names in that, but that's the team's responsibility. So hide that.
You said that you can also derive some of the areas where the team should learn from the backlog.
Yeah.
Say 1 or 2 sentences about how you do that, and also what if you cannot see what they need to learn in the backlog yet.
Yeah. Okay. The question was, how do we derive areas of learning from the product backlog? And the second part of the question was, what is if you cannot derive it directly from the backlog, but you learn it over time, right? That was the second part. So if you go from a component-oriented organization, from component teams to feature teams, it becomes pretty clear that at least on the technical side, they need to touch all the components. So this might be one source of, do we have enough knowledge in all these components we are going to touch? But there might be also some business features in there. Maybe where you're from your further engagement. So maybe you have a team working on the highway pilot and now joining the area for urban pilot. So there are different things to learn or different hardware components to use, for instance, and maybe they need to learn on that as well. Or maybe you have that fact that your organization, which many organizations do in the digital world now, we need to use AI. What the hell is that? Who would like to learn that? So you can also derive something from that. Or maybe you go from a banking system towards another finance system for insurance or for accounting. So maybe they need to learn something from accounting. So this can one source of that. Another one is maybe you have a current architecture workshop and you decide to apply other technologies in your organization. Also, that can be a source of a learning field which the team needs to learn. And if you find out over time, then, and it's important, you can reflect in the retrospective, would we like to do a new team knowledge model on that? It's happened very often that teams, when they do the second or the third model, they figure out that in that area we know enough. That's not a dedicated learning area anymore for us. There is still some stuff to learn, but we do not take care too much focus from the team perspective. So maybe they remove such an area and then add a new one and add that to the new model. And then they derive that. That's also possible. And it's easier to do that if you have smaller cycles between that. If it takes a year, it's quite hard. If you do that every 3 months, it's easier. But it's related to the team. I think I don't hear it by myself. I give you my mic.
Sure. So my question is, recently I've heard from a friend that the market now is a kind of gone off, and the developers who come to work don't want to learn anything else than their specialization. And do you have any tips how to encourage such people to learn other things?
So that's a very good question, because if you are in an environment where every person thinks like you just described, that won't work. They even would not have an interest to do that, right? And this is something where Greg Lamb always saying that structure is very important to change the culture, and in less structural elements are also career path. So it would be beneficial in organizations if they would focus on how much do you contribute to the learning to others as well in the career path. And what I think one of the main reasons for an individual to learn is I can increase my market share if I can do things which others cannot do. And to combine different things together will even make you more an expert in different areas, and that makes you even more attractive for employer. I know we have, at the moment, we have an employee market. You can go everywhere and can, but then there is something different wrong. So, and that's what I mentioned. It would be really nice if you have agreed in the team that they are a learning community and that they support each other in learning and growing for the purpose of an individual benefit. And then it's much easier. I think you have still a question, right? Didn't work the first time, but maybe it's better now.
So this looks related also, or similar way of doing as the feature team adaptation map in one way or another. So is there overlap between this and that?
Oh, okay, thank you very much. That's really interesting. I never really thought about that, because maybe you can combine that. If you do the feature team adoption map, you derive, that's another source of deriving learning areas. You increase the challenges on the y-axis in the product. Maybe they do not just their subsystems, or they work now from maybe front and back end, they have to work on both. So there might be, if you do a self-designing team workshop, you have then maybe, to keep that very simple, you have few or some front-end developers, some back-end developers. And if we be strict on that, we assume now that the back-end people have no clue what front-end is, and the front-end people have no clue what back-end is. So there might be two learning areas which you can derive then from the feature team adoption map. And also on the x-axis, you can also think about these technical issues where you eliminate the undone work for instance. There might be, okay, we need more skills in test automation, or our continuous integration practices are not good enough. I think also so to hopefully answer your question, that is more a combination. You can do both independent from each other. It might be beneficial to do one after another as a source of input, and then track how we are proceeding on that. All right? Further questions? If not, thank you very much for your attention.